tape. It is on the head of the master of Hedda Hopper's Hollywood, a Talent Associates production produced in association with the Paramount Television Network. Today is January the 3rd, I think. This is an audio test synchronization test.
This is a story of my town. There's no town like it on the face of the earth, because its business is make-believe. And for over 50 years, the people in this town have been getting up and going to work to tell the world a story. Down in that valley, some of them are busy crowning an emperor, and others are fighting the Civil War again. Somewhere else, a band of cattle thieves are shooting it out with the sheriff's posse. And two people who only met this morning are being married in front of an army of cameramen and crew. For this is Hollywood. You know, I've lived in this town for many years. I've acted in it, and I've written about it for 21 years. I've seen spectacular changes, because everything Hollywood does is spectacular. So are its people, and they're part of this story. But no story has ever come out of Hollywood as spectacular as the change going on right now to its work, to its homes, to its people. And you wouldn't have to go far to find it. You need only go as far as the studio gate. A bright, red-headed girl began her career here. She married a Cuban. Later, they were fired, but they returned to buy the studio and change its name to Desilu.
Jerry, you better rehearse Georgine in that first number right away. I'll see you inside. Well, hello there. Oh, these are some of the actors from our little theater group. Kids? See, we're doing another review in here soon, right here in our little theater. I think you better get in and get to rehearsing. Right. I'll be right in. Here in our Desilu workshop, we have paid audiences. As I feel, a paying audience is a more demanding audience. It's a very little theater, but I think it's better for the kids to have a paid audience. You see, I got my first start here on this theater when the studio belonged to RKO, and Ginger Rogers' mother was our coach. And I never forgot how helpful it was to me. So when Desi and I took over the studio, Desi gave me permission to reactivate the little theater. And our first presentation was the Desilu Review, and we're all very grateful for the way it was received. And right now I have to go to stage 9, where they're shooting The Untouchable, A boy by the name of Nick Giorgiotti is a regular in that series. And he belongs to our group. And I also want to go to stage 3 where Ann Southern is rehearsing because I'm trying to talk her into using a couple from our group. And then I have to check on some costumes at wardrobe. So if you'll excuse me.
Or you might drop in on another stage and talk to a very charming young man who's an actor, director, manager, Bob Cummings.
Well, I guess you might call me an actor, director, manager. But there was a time when I was told that I wasn't even an actor. And that was by a very fine producer at Paramount. I'd been there for a number of years doing B pictures, and yet I wasn't really getting anywhere, just stirring batter. And one day this producer called me into his office and said, "Now look, Bob, this is not going to be an easy thing to tell you. But if I were you, I'd quit show business. You're a very nice fellow and all that, but you just don't connect. It's not enough to be just a nice fellow in Hollywood." I guess I agreed with him in a way because no one was saying, "Hey, Mom, don't do the dishes. Bob Cummings is on at the Bijou." Well, about a week later, I got a call from Ernest Lubitsch, that really wonderful director, who said to me that he'd been watching my progress at Paramount, and he thought that I had quite a bit of talent. He said, "I really can't understand why you were dropped." Well, now I was pretty confused because here were two top men whom I respected with completely different opinions about me. Well, Mr. Lubitsch was offering me a picture, a test, really, and we did the test, and it turned out wonderfully, but unfortunately the people with the money said, "Bob Cummings, are you kidding? We have to have a name." So I was back to wondering where the next meal was coming from again. One day again, I was at home reading, the phone rang, and a man with a German accent said, "Well, hello there, who is this?" And I said, "Well, hello down there, who is this?" And we kidded back and forth like that for a few moments. I thought it was just some friend that was joking. And then I suddenly realized it wasn't a friend joking. It was the great director, Henry Koster. It was really he. And he said the night before he'd been with Ernest Lubitsch at a function, and that Lubitsch had told him that I was some sort of a genius. And he said he was looking for a young genius with experience. Well, I'd done about 30 pictures up to then, and I did have quite a bit of experience. So I jumped at the chance he offered. It was a lead with Deanna Durbin at Universal in Three Smart Girls Grow Up. And it was this picture that got me star billing. Well, I owe a great debt of gratitude to Ernest Lubitsch for that and for a statement that he made to me at the time that I was doing the test for him. He said, "Bob, one day you're going to be your own director and you're going to chop out a niche for yourself in this world." I didn't really realize then how prophetic that was because along came television, and now I'm my own director, and if you don't mind at this moment, I'm going out and I'm going to keep chopping out that niche.
On another stage, a young actor talking about young actors, Tony Perkins.
I think that young people, young actors and actresses in Hollywood today have one problem collectively over any other, and that is that while on one hand, national magazines, picture exhibitors, the movie-going public, actually everyone that's interested or involved with the industry at all, while all these people continually clamor for unique new personalities, young stars with some sense of style and difference, still, when young performers out here attempt, even unconsciously, to individualize themselves, either by their conduct or in their performances, they're instantly put down by Hollywood the critic as being eccentric and difficult, ungrateful publicity seekers, to such an extent that with seemingly so much at stake where a picture career is concerned, that it takes a tremendous amount of courage and nerve to say, well, this is the way I feel about things, and this is what I believe and think, and this is the way I'm going to behave.
But behind all truth is makeup and the makeup men. Here are four famous ones, the Westmore brothers.
I'm Perce. I created the makeup for Paul Muni and Emil Zola, and also had the privilege of shaving Betty Davis's head for Queen Elizabeth.
I'm Bud. I made Ann Blythe into a mermaid and Jimmy Cagney into a man of 1,000 faces.
I'm Wally, and I aged Barbara Stanwyck into a 100-year-old woman.
And I'm Frank. I put hair on Yul Brynner.
Walk on any lot and you'll find a Westmore. also a cowboy. About 10 years ago, Hopalong Cassidy rode into the American living room and created a new type of bronco buster, the TV cowboy.
Hi, I'm Jody McCrea, and I just rode over from Wichita town where I'm working with my dad. You know, making TV westerns is quite a bit different from big feature pictures. For one thing, we make 32 pictures a year instead of 4 or 5, so it's pretty fast work. And you have to learn a lot of dialogue in a short period of time. You got to be as fast with the words as you are with a gun. Just as the range has been fenced in by barbed wire, I think when TV came, it kind of fenced in the Western. So we concentrate on intensifying character and story to be told in a shorter period of time. Well, like they say in TV, time's mighty important. And I have to get over to Wichita town. Be seeing you.
And where there's one cowboy, you'll often find another.
Hi. These young bucks like Jody seem to be riding the television range in the good old tradition of the Westerns. And the Western is something I know a little bit about. In fact, about 1/5 of the pictures I've made have been Westerns. My very first talking picture was The Virginian. Back in the early days, we used to wonder when the Western story material would peter out. Seems like it never will, so we go on making them. Of course, I like to vary my work and do other kinds of roles. One of the things I was proud of playing was the role of Lou Gehrig in The Pride of the Yankees and Sergeant York. And I like the comedies that I did for Lubitsch. And, of course, Mr. Deeds Goes to Town. And, of course, High Noon, another Western. Well, I always seem to get back to them, and that's what I like to do every year or so. I like getting back into the old 10-gallon hat. Yep.
Gary Cooper's name is synonymous with Westerns. One of the best he made was The Plainsman. It was directed by Cecil DeMille, whose pictures were an era in themselves. They were tradition. And here in his library today, the tradition is kept alive. He worked in this room. While sitting in that chair, he planned the dividing of the Red Sea. And at night, after directing at the studio all day, he sat in this chair to watch the newly filmed scenes run off. And beside him, taking notes, would be Ann Bauchens, who cut and edited every DeMille picture for 40 years.
How I came to work for Mr. DeMille was very amusing. I was secretary to his brother William. In those days, you know, there were no editors. All the directors cut their own pictures. William taught me. Well, later in my cutting room, when I would find a few minutes' time to slip away, I would always visit CB's set because they were the most colorful and exciting of all the sets on the lot. One day when I arrived, CB was being rather sharp with one of his assistants. And he turned to me and he said, "This is how it would be if you worked on my pictures. You wouldn't like it." And I said, "Someday, Mr. DeMille, I am going to work on your pictures." He turned to me and he was rather surprised, and he said, "You are? And what are you going to do?" I said, "I'm going to cut your pictures." "No one," he said, "will ever cut a picture of mine but me." Well, about 2 months or so later, I was in my cutting room, and one of his assistants came down and said, "What are you doing here? You're supposed to be on the set." And I said, "Me?" He said, "Yes, they must have forgotten to tell you. You're CB's new cutter. You're his new film editor." Well, that was the beginning of my 40 years. And they were the most exciting years and most satisfying years, working with Mr. DeMille on all his wonderful and exciting pictures. I wouldn't trade them at any cost.
DeMille was awarded honors from all over the world. He was glorified and criticized. He said, "I make pictures for people, not for critics." He understood that people love stories. He was master of the spectacle. And spectacle was Hollywood's cup of tea. From the San Francisco earthquake to William Wyler's chariot race.
This particular point that we were talking about was here. Is this the same sort of stuff?
Well, we'd have to depend upon the sun, don't you see? In the mornings, did you do that? You depended upon the sun, didn't you? In the morning, we shoot this side and the
Excuse me just a second, Mr. Bushman. We were just sort of sitting here discussing our mutual interest in chariot racing. The reason why this is so is because we have all at one point or another appeared in a production of Ben-Hur. My name is Stephen Boyd, and I play Masala in the present production of Ben-Hur. And one of the sort of things that we were discussing was the dangerous aspect and the excitement and all the rest of it in chariot racing. On the dangerous side, there was one particular point where I had to be dragged, and the company very kindly made a sort of a steel contraption that would give me some sort of protection around my stomach. And they naturally did a dry run on this just to see whether or not it would work or not. And I was down at the other end of the track, and I saw them go up on this dry run, and it looked all right to me, but when they got to the other end of it, they stopped, and they all got around, and they seemed like they were having a conference. So I wondered what was going on, and finally, the young Italian doctor who was there came walking down to me, and he said, "Steve, you want to die? Go die." Now it is my pleasure and privilege to introduce to you Francis X. Bushman, who played Masala in the original film version of Ben-Hur. Mr. Bushman was just telling me that he, too, found some difficulties with the chariot race.
I should say wrecks every day and horses killed. But you know that one incident sticks in my mind. They were taking a close-up with me, showing all the other chariots in the rear, don't you know? They had a racing car right in front of me. They had two cameras on the platform. And right behind me was a chariot, you understand, coming right at me. And down here was an Englishman, one of the assistant directors. He was directing the other chariots. And over here was a little Italian with a bucket of volcanic dust. And he threw the dust down, you know, because we had no horses up here. Well, all of a sudden, the motor missed. Just enough to stay me a little bit. And these horses were all on my chariot. And here was this single tree with this big lion's head on it, right in this Englishman's face. And I have just looked around. I knew the horses' faces were right there, and I sliced around with my whip, caught all four across their faces, and, of course, saved his life. So when we got around and stopped, the Italian, he flew. He ran. We never saw him again. And the Englishman said to me, "Quite close, wasn't it?" Well, you know, I admired that fellow so much that I had him brought over here, and I suppose he's still here. And now, here was my opponent in the other Ben-Hur himself, the one who ruined me for life, Ramon Novarro.
Thank you. I certainly remember that, but I also remember something else that happened to me during the filming of it. I was being dragged to the galleys, all chained, and we got to the oasis. I was extremely thirsty and rushed to get some water. And a Roman soldier picked me by the hair and threw me right back. They were not sure whether they were going to take it in Technicolor or black and white. So they were taking it, the whole sequence, in both, black and white and Technicolor. We took the scene 36 times. And then the director said, "Another time, please." I said, "Nothing doing." I said, "You take your best 6 takes out of it, because I haven't enough hair to go around."
Would have been fine, a bald-headed Ben-Hur.
I would like to know what you think of this.
I've been watching those boys over there and thinking that 35 years has passed between the first Ben-Hur and the one you're seeing today. You know, it wouldn't surprise me if they made another Ben-Hur sometime. There have always been big pictures and stars of the Brown Derby talking about them. And someone like me getting a good story out of it. You know, every morning when I go to work, I thank the good Lord I'm still alive. Like everybody else in this town, I go to work and come home at night. There are many kinds of homes in Hollywood. This is mine. I bought it 17 years ago. Oh, and I love it. I hope to go on living in it for the rest of my life. Yes, this town is famous for its homes, homes of every kind. But whether you live in a 30-room mansion with imported Italian marble or a simple little ranch house, the family life goes on just the same. There was a time when you kept your children out of sight, since it was considered unglamorous for a star to be a parent just like anybody else. But nowadays, on any fine Sunday afternoon, you can see a family like the Jimmy Stewarts leaving their house to visit friends. And it doesn't seem to be unusual or unglamorous anymore to have a family. What do you think, Jimmy? Or you might go visiting another family in Beverly Hills.
For my name, one for the little boy who lives in the lane. And the little boy's name is Christopher, who gets some ice cream because he's such a good little boy.
And find Hope Lange and Don Murray entertaining their children with a puppet show.
There's somebody watching us. What? Somebody watching us? Where? There.
Oh, hello. Well, I had no idea. I want you to meet some friends of ours. Come here, Chris. I want you to meet somebody. This is Christopher. That's our son. And this is our daughter, Patricia.
Now, what is your name?
Which? This one? My name is B.J. Sturdley, the retired Indian. Oh, yes. I'm not really an Indian, though. I'm actually a nuclear physicist. But I think every man should think for himself.
Anyway, this is Pittsburgh, the pirate. We got the idea of doing puppet shows for the children from when I was in Germany. That's what he thinks about puppet shows. Over there, they do what they call Casper plays, and they entertain their own children instead of depending so much for outside entertainment. And it's very nice because it gives you sort of a thing to do together in the house when the children are too young for organized sports. So we picked up the idea, and we've been doing puppet shows for our kids.
Kids get a little bored with it at times, but Don and I manage to have fun.
That's the truth.
But you're such a ham. Jokes, so you better leave those for me. We've got to go have some ice cream.
Hey, let's have ice cream. Come on, Chris, we're going to have some ice cream. Come on, Christopher, we're going to get some ice cream. Okay, now say goodbye, everybody. Goodbye. Goodbye. Bye-bye.
Today, stars like Hope and Don Murray live in homes like this. But it wasn't always that way. If you'd lived here in the 20s, you might have been invited to a home like this. If you were expected for a dinner party, it was wise to take a little extra time, because this is how you would get from the front gate to the house. That is, if you were dropping in on the Harold Lloyds. And there you were, if you hadn't run out of gas. Why, in 1926, it took 12 gardeners to keep this looking like Versailles and look after the other 23 acres. But I wouldn't dare tell you how few servants they have now. But they keep the fountains playing in the cypress gardens. And there he is, Harold Lloyd, with his son Harold Jr. and his little granddaughter Susan. You know, a few years ago, a bunch of us gave a giant benefit here and raised $69,000 in 2 hours for the nursery school for visually handicapped children. Oh, I remember many fabulous luncheon parties here by the pool with people like Mary Pickford, Douglas Fairbanks, Bebe Daniels, Valentino. Some of them are gone, but their voices and their laughter often seem to linger on in the ripples of this pool. reflections and memories in this pool also, in the garden of another great house. When I stand looking at this home, I always seem to hear the sound of distant music, because there was always a party going on. And you know, there was a time in this town when if you hadn't made it socially unless you'd had an invitation to the home of Miss Marion Davies. Marion loved big parties and gave them on a lavish scale. There were always music, dancing, hundreds of people swarming on the terraces of her many homes. Oh, you could almost always count on an ex-president, a European nobleman, several duchesses, or even a prime minister. Sir Winston Churchill and George Bernard Shaw were guests in her home. But to this day, no matter who you are, you'll always get a gracious welcome from a great lady who has always been overly generous and really quite shy, Miss Marion Davies.
It's so nice to have you here. Welcome to my home.
Yes, there are still many great houses that belong to the glorious gilded days before income tax. And there are houses like these, charming, Victorian, gabled, with wide green lawns and gracious trees that remind one of a Midwestern town so long ago. And in this one, Judy Garland lived. And from that porch window on the side, she sang her heart out to the boy next door. But if you follow this pretty street as it winds down to the corner, you will realize that these are houses where nobody ever really lived. And the street isn't listed in any directory because it was built for the movie Meet Me in St. Louis. And where its pavement ends, all you would find would be trucks, trailers, and lighting equipment, because these houses are in the back lot at MGM. And these charming houses belong to a very famous street in Filmland, and on it once a very famous family lived.
Oh, hi. This is Carville Street, and that's Judge Hardy's house, where all the Andy Hardy pictures were made. And I'm Andy Hardy's son. Well, Mickey Rooney's son, Teddy. My dad said I ought to come down here and look it over, the way he used to do when he was a kid, because I'm in the business, too. Tomorrow, I'm going to start the first of my television series, called The Man of the House. You see, in TV and movies, you got to learn from the bottom up, because it's tough. That's what I keep on telling my dad. He says it was tough in his early days, but how would he know? He was only a kid. So long.
Out in the back lots, they have built whole towns like this. Why, they even burned Atlanta for General Sherman. Anything a movie requires can be reproduced. Jungles, forests. Tell them what you want and they'll make it. Ships that never sail. Trains that never leave. Churches. Inns. Palaces. Tenements. And even opera houses. Yes, this is the Paris Opera House at Universal, now Revue Studios, one of the oldest sets left standing in this town. They built this in 1925, oh, long before my time, for Lon Chaney's classic Phantom of the Opera, the silent version. Countless theater scenes have been shot here, but it's always spoken of as the Phantom set. Why, up there is the original chandelier, which Lon, as the Phantom, cut down and sent crashing on the audience of extras, glittering in fake rhinestone jewelry, oh, so long ago, and fake orchestras tuned up in that pit. When it stands empty like this, it's so full of ghosts. Many great stars of the past have acted and sung roles on this make-believe stage. Stars like John Barrymore,
The play's the thing wherein I'll...
Tyrone Power.
This flesh was seeded from no foreign grave.
Marion Lange.
Miss Hopper, excuse me.
Why, John Cassavetes, what are you doing here?
Well, I'm so sorry to interrupt your reverie, but we need the set. We're rehearsing a scene from Johnny Staccato, and we had this theater for only 1 hour. We're so busy here.
Okay, it's all yours.
You're an angel.
You know, I've been thrown off better sets than this. You think Rome wasn't built in a day? They could build it on a back lot. But lately, a big change has come about, and only a famous director like King Vidor could explain the reason for it.
Nowadays, you don't build Rome, you go there. A few years ago, the big screen was resurrected and revived, but the big screen made new demands on our talents. The little faked-up sets on the Hollywood backlots were doomed. Directors started searching the face of the world for authentic locations. Stories had to be bigger, more spectacular in order to fill the giant screen. Well, I remember back in the 20s when we made battle scenes for the big parade, we used 400 extras. In my latest film, Solomon and Sheba, made entirely in Spain, we used 5,000. In the earlier film, Behind a Battle Close-Up of John Gilbert, we used 50 soldiers. In battle close-ups of Yul Brynner as Solomon, we used 1,000 for the background action alone. If you were to ask me if these new techniques presented added problems, I would have to answer yes, they do. But if you enjoy your work as much as I do, there are no problems.
Great directors created great stars. The earlier stars were molded out of the dust of illusion. They were kept in the half-light. One of these magical stars has remained young in looks and outlook, Gloria Swanson.
Cecil DeMille made pictures of splendor and grandeur. And I've always believed that the screen should be an auditorium of escape, a dream world. This is what I think women want. It was Mary who used to take, well, John to the movies. Why? Because she could identify herself on the screen. Now, John can still identify himself because the men of his age are still there, but I think they're now playing opposite youngsters. And so, therefore, Mary could no longer identify herself. Pictures were made for the adult woman, and it was she who made the pictures so well known, not only in America, but throughout the world. And most of these pictures allowed people to escape through romance and love. And I have a hunch that romance and love are not dead. At least, I want to think so.
Today they start as young as Gloria did, but their attitude is different. It could be the attitude of a star like, say, Debbie Reynolds.
Hello. When anyone talks about escape, all I can think about is escaping from this dressing room. I've been in one for so long that I don't even know what's going on in the outside world. You know, when I first started in show business, I started in musicals. And I was very fortunate to be able to work with the great masters like Gene Kelly and Fred Astaire, who taught me the fundamentals. Nowadays, young people aren't that fortunate. But I was very lucky. I really think it's the greatest business in the whole world. At least it is for me. It's made me very happy. You know, for the past 2 years, I've been working like mad. And in fact, this last year, I made 5 pictures, and next month I'm starting another one. And then I'm going to do my first musical television show. And, you know, I'm tired just thinking about it. I think what I really need is a vacation. Does anybody out there have a spare room? You do? Miami? Don't go away. I'll be right there.
Today it's all done in more of a hurry, and you would only have to stand at a studio gate early one morning and see how a young starlet arrives at a studio, very often driving something that looks like a beetle into the parking lot and dressed informally like Venetia Stevenson. And that's how they do it today. This is the way they used to do it. Come to my town from all over the world, and their faces tell more of the story of Hollywood than 1,000 words. Since the beginning of movies, an endless parade of faces has moved across the screen, and among the host of them, only one, I think, has the right to be called a legend. The tall Swedish girl whom MGM hired for $250 a week after changing her name from Gustafsson to Garbo. And that's the way she looked when she first arrived. Then she went on to become Anna Karenina, Mata Hari, Queen Christina, and the great Camille. You know, it was a stroke of good fortune to get into a Garbo picture, and I finally made it. I played her sister in As You Desire Me, and for a brief time, she dropped her shyness, and I found behind the legend the person. Warm, charming, intelligent, all the things I'd been told by the people who had worked with her.
I'm William Daniels. I was Garbo's cameraman on 24 of her 26 pictures. Among all the stars that I've photographed over the years, she was the most outstanding and certainly the most photogenic. We soon learned that her greatest beauty was her eyes, so we always used as many big close-ups as possible. Remember the final shot in Queen Christina? Also full figure shots to show her graceful movements. Most actors or actresses who worked with her for the first time came to the set rather in awe, but in no time had fallen in love with her because of her unselfishness. I had many opportunities over 15 years to see this. Since her last picture, I've met her several times, and she is still very beautiful. And I can only hope that one day soon she will decide to come back to the screen, because there's a whole new generation who have never seen her.
The older generation saw her first in The Torrent. It was silent, for the screen hadn't yet begun to talk. And she played opposite a young, popular leading man, the first in a long parade of the men who made love to Garbo and vice versa. Ricardo Cortez.
Yes, I was Miss Garbo's first leading man. I remember when she first came on the set and we were introduced by the director. And within a few minutes, we were playing a torrid love scene. I admired Miss Garbo very much. She was sensitive and very shy, and a hard worker. I recall we had to do a night scene in which a dam had burst, and when the water hit us in the tank, why, she was practically drowned. But she never complained, and she was always that way. Now, during the time we were making the picture, a friend of mine came on the set with Marcus Lowe, who was then president of MGM Pictures. And my friend said, who was that girl? Mr. Lowe looked at Miss Garbo and said, I don't know. Some girl they brought over from Sweden. That girl from Sweden was something, wasn't she?
As Garbo is immortal, so is Mickey, and the man who created him.
Yes, that's the mouse. The only mouse to ever win an Oscar. And to show his appreciation, he presented me with this mousker. It says, to Walt, in appreciation, Mickey Mouse. Mickey and I have been friends a long time, 32 years. This is the film clip from his first motion picture, Steamboat Willie, made in 1928 at the cost of $1,200. Mickey became a star in his own right from the beginning. People all over the world sort of put him on a pedestal. And whenever he did anything wrong, they would write in and tell us about it. This forced us to create another character, a more mischievous character, a duck. Donald, that is. But it was Mickey who opened the door for everything that has happened since. He made it possible for us to produce our first feature-length cartoon, Snow White and the Seven Dwarfs, and the many things that followed, such as Disneyland the Park, the Magic Kingdom in Anaheim, that has been visited by over 20 million people from all over the world, and then our television programs, our true life adventure features, and the many, many other things that we have produced since. The first $1,200 Mickey Mouse cartoon made it possible for us to take the time and the money, $3.5 million, to make our latest cartoon feature, 101 Dalmatians, which is on the drawing boards now. What Mickey Mouse began keeps me busier than I've ever been before in my life, but I love it. And I have a soft spot in my heart for him. For whatever we are is due to the mouse. And I'm glad that Hedda has paid him the honor of placing him among the Hollywood immortals. It couldn't happen to a nicer mouse.
Walt Disney has made pictures for all children from 8 to 80. Children in any town are the promise of its future, and one of Hollywood's most promising ones is Judy Garland and Vincent Minelli's little daughter, Liza.
There's a land that I heard of once in a lullaby. Somewhere over the rainbow, skies are blue, and the dreams that you dare to dream really do come true. Someday I wish upon a star and wake up where the clouds are far behind me, where troubles melt like lemon drops away above the chimney tops. That's where you'll find me. Somewhere over the rainbow, bluebirds fly. Birds fly over the rainbow. Why, then, oh, why can't I live happy little bluebirds fly beyond the rainbow? Why, oh, why can't
The young and hopeful come to my town from all over the world to be discovered. 1 in 1,000 makes it, and only 1 in 20,000 ever gets to meet a gentleman named Oscar. And this is the very first Oscar ever presented to a leading lady. The lady who had the honor of winning this Academy Award, a first lady in many ways, is Janet Gaynor.
I often think that back in 1928, I wasn't fully aware of the honor that was being paid me, because after all, it was the first presentation. The Academy of Motion Picture Arts and Sciences had only been formed that year for recognition of work in the industry. And I think it was so remarkable that I was chosen because I was a newcomer.
I received this award as Best Actress for 3 pictures which I'd made one right after the other. Seventh Heaven, Sunrise, and Street Angel. And they were my first leading roles. So I think it was unique for that reason, too, because ever since then, it's only been given for one performance. The late Emo Jannings received the first award for 3 performances, too. And I remember the presentation took place in the Hollywood Roosevelt Hotel without the aid of television. And since then, this statue has been multiplied into the hundreds and has come to stand for the highest tribute that can be paid to anyone in motion pictures. But I like to think of this one as being rather special. A little old, but very dear.
But there is no one in Hollywood more highly regarded than Bob Hope.
Oh, hello there. Say, you know, the theme of this program, in case you've been dial twirling, is Our Town, Hollywood. Much has been said and written about Hollywood these past 25 years, and at this time, I'm allowed 3 minutes for rebuttal. Many ugly lies are created about Hollywood, which later turn out to be true. This is merely characteristic of any town trying to make good. But there's one thing you can say about Hollywood that you can't say about other small towns. Nobody goes around spreading gossip behind other people's backs. The columnists say it here, right to your face. I enjoyed the discourse on makeup earlier, and you've got to hand it to those makeup men. They've done more for American women than community property. We all owe a lot to our makeup men, the Rembrandts of the wrinkles, the Picassos of the crow's feet. How can the industry ever repay the men who thought of putting sequins on Doris Day's freckles? The men who put the weights in Robert Mitchum's eyelids? How can we ever repay the genius who thought of putting ping-pong balls under Audrey Hepburn's cheekbones? And you get an idea of the real ingenuity of the makeup artist when you realize that Tony Curtis originally came out here to play Pa Kettle. And Rhonda Fleming, I bet you didn't know that she used to go under the name of Zazu Pitts. Of course, some stars have to depend on looks to get parts. Poor slobs. I get my parts in the true tradition of the real actor. I put money in the picture. No, I never fully unleash my makeup man. After all, it'd be silly having 2 Rock Hudsons around. And my makeup man's a nice fellow, nice about little things like not asking for stunt pay. And I feel that I'm lucky. I really do. Mother Nature took care of me. I just thought I'd tell you, so many people think it was a truck. I've been unpacking. I just spent a week in Alaska with Jane Mansfield. There's nothing I won't do to entertain our troops. No, I just made a quick flight to Alaska. Of course, the fact that the TV investigation was going on had nothing to do with it. That investigation is really something, isn't it? Who would ever think that wrestling would turn out to be the most honest thing on TV? And they're really cracking down on the payola thing here at NBC. And I want to thank all of you who didn't send me Christmas presents. It's really getting ridiculous. This morning, General Sarnoff sent for my x-rays. I think they're going too far with this honesty thing. The other night on Wells Fargo, the heavies held up the stagecoach and gave back all the money from the week before. For instance, we filmed our TV show in Alaska with Jane Mansfield, Steve McQueen, Francis Langford, Skinny Ennis, Jerry Colonna, Neil Adams, Tony Romano, and Jane Mansfield. Funny how that name keeps popping up. It's the first trip in 5 years we've made without Hedda, our favorite den mother. You know, she makes a wonderful chaperone. Funny how careful you get with 400 newspapers looking over your shoulder. And Hedda has a fabulous fund of Hollywood knowledge. She knows who's who, who's where, where's what, and how, when, and where there's going to be some hoo-hooing. Hedda's a listener on the largest party line in the world. And she has to wear those big hats to keep the secrets from leaking out. Hedda's hats were a sensation overseas. They kept waiting for the little green man to get out. And she can remember back to when Hollywood was making smellies accidentally, when Shirley Temple was reading her own storybook and Bing was doing Dean Martin's act, when Mickey Rooney was drinking milk and Yul Brynner was using Cookie's comb. She really knows Hollywood all the way from Beverly Bain to Tuesday Weld, from Elmo Lincoln to Rip Torn. And Hedda's always encouraged young talent. Years ago, she told me to keep on with what I was doing, never to give up. What I didn't like about it, I was working in my brother's butcher shop at the time. And I must say in honesty that Hedda and I have had our little feuds. It started the day I was born. I'd promised her the exclusive on my birth, and to this day she swears I tipped off my mother. And I think Hedda's gowns are very colorful tonight. She makes the NBC peacock look like a beatnik seagull. By the way, they have a Beatniks Anonymous out here now. If a beatnik feels like he wants to take a bath or dress up, he calls a friend. But back to Hedda, I want to say that she's a good friend. She's very exciting, very provocative in her business, but she loves her work and she loves this business. She loves the movies, she loves the people, and they love her. It's one Hollywood romance that's lasted.
All this and all these people are only a small part of the story of my town and of its past and present. Nobody can write the finish, for nobody can prophesy it. Always there have been people saying, this is the end. Always there will be people saying, this is a beginning. Hollywood can only reflect a way of life, and life is ever-changing. But come sound, come big screen, come television, and whatever they may invent after that, one thing will remain steadfast. The desire of people to tell a story that is the dream of which my town was built. And that dream will remain forever.
Hope's appearance through the courtesy of Buick. Speaking for Rexall, Barbara Young. Miss Young's gowns by Wayne Fuller. This has been a Talent Associates production from Hollywood.